Back at the mansion, perched high above the Hudson, the silence felt heavier than usual. The floor-to-ceiling windows reflected nothing but the dim winter sky, and every hallway seemed too wide, too quiet, too painfully empty. The house had always been cold, built of marble, glass, and money, but tonight something in that emptiness felt different, because Ava was no longer herself. Grayson stood just outside her bedroom door, one hand braced against the frame, staring at the baby monitor screen as if it held the answer to a question he didn't know how to ask. The soft glow showed his little girl curled tightly beneath her blanket, knees tucked to her chest, her stuffed bear pressed so close it nearly disappeared in her trembling arms. Her curls, usually springy and wild, framed her face in small, tangled waves. She looked fragile, frightened, lost. The nanny had tried everything: songs, stories, new toys still smelling like plastic, warm milk just the way Ava usually liked. Nothing worked. Ava hadn't touched her dinner. She hadn't smiled. She hadn't laughed her tiny bell-like laugh since that day on the sidewalk. And now, in the dim quiet of her room, she whispered again, barely louder than a breath. "Miss Natalie. Where's Miss Natalie?" The words pierced the air like a crack through glass. Grayson's chest tightened. His daughter didn't ask for people. She rarely formed attachments, not to babysitters, not to teachers, not even to the long line of nannies he hired, hoping one would make her feel safe again. But she had clung to that one nurse in the street, held her as if she were the only steady thing left in a world that suddenly tilted beneath her feet. Ava shifted under the blanket, burying her face into her bear. "I want Miss Natalie," she murmured again, a soft sob catching at the end. Grayson closed his eyes. He had built empires, negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking. But this? Watching his daughter break in front of him, he felt helpless in a way he had never known. And for the first time in a very long while, he wished he could call someone, not a doctor, not staff, not security. Just one woman. The stranger who had knelt in the street and held his daughter like she mattered. Miss Natalie. The next day was worse. Nothing worked. Ava turned her small face away from the spoon again, her mouth pressed into a thin, stubborn line. At first Grayson had thought it would pass. Ava had meltdowns before. But this wasn't defiance. This was sorrow. The untouched bowl of oatmeal sat on the tray like a symbol of the house itself, warm once, now cold, untouched, lifeless. That night, alone in his dark-paneled office, Grayson sat with his phone in hand. He scrolled through his recent calls until he stopped at an unfamiliar number. The outgoing call from 2 days earlier, the moment everything shifted. He hovered for a second, then pressed dial. Across the city in her tiny Queen studio, Natalie was rinsing out a mug when her phone buzzed. Unknown caller. She almost ignored it. Almost. Something in her chest tugged her hand toward the screen. "Hello? It's Grayson Wells." A brief silence. The name alone would have made most people gape, stumble, apologize. Natalie remained steady. "Yes?" she asked gently. He cleared his throat, the sound carrying strain, vulnerability, something startling coming from a man like him. "She won't eat," he said. "She won't sleep. She keeps asking for you." Natalie's hand stilled around the mug. "Ava?" "Yes." Another pause. Then quickly, "I'm not calling to offer you a job. I know money isn't what you care about." "Then what are you asking?" she asked softly. A long breath. "I'm asking if you'd come, just for a few days. She trusts you, and I'm out of options." Natalie closed her eyes, remembering the tiny, trembling fingers wrapped around hers. The way Ava's heartbeat steadied when she hummed. "Okay," she whispered, "but I'm coming for Ava. Only her." The Wells estate was colder than she imagined. Not physically, just emotionally barren. Glossy marble, chrome fixtures, vast windows swallowing the skyline. Everything immaculate, everything hollow, until Ava appeared. The little girl ran across the hallway barefoot, stumbling in her hurry. "Miss Natalie!" she squealed, flinging herself into Natalie's arms. Natalie dropped to her knees, hugging her tightly as Ava buried her face in her neck. It was the first smile Ava had managed in days. Grayson stood several steps behind, hands in his pockets, watching something thaw inside his daughter and inside himself. "Thank you," he murmured, voice quieter, almost reverent. "I'm here for a few days," Natalie said, "until she's steady." He nodded. "I understand." Days passed, and the house began to breathe again. Ava giggled. She talked. She drew pictures with crayons on the marble floor, something Grayson hadn't seen in months. Bedtime stories were only acceptable if Natalie read them. Meals were eaten only if Natalie sat beside her. Morning cartoons required Natalie's arm around her shoulders. Grayson found himself lingering in doorways, observing a version of his home he didn't recognize, a home filled with softness. One morning, he found Ava coloring while Natalie organized crayons. "You're incredible with her," he said. "She's easy to love," Natalie replied without looking up. "You're different." She raised a brow. "Different how?" "Everyone who walks into this house wants something." Natalie smiled faintly. "I didn't walk in. You invited me, and I still don't want anything." He stared at her, thrown by how calmly she said it. She stood. "Now, if you'll excuse me, Ava wants pancakes and thinks I'm a 5-star chef." As she passed him, their shoulders brushed. A small, accidental touch, but it stirred something electric in the air. He watched her go, realizing he wasn't ready for the warmth she brought to leave. The first night, Natalie didn't unpack. She reminded herself, temporary. But Ava curled beside her on the guest bed, tiny fingers gripping her sleeve like a lifeline. Down the hall, Grayson listened through the cracked door as Natalie told Ava a story, something about a brave rabbit and a misplaced compass. Her voice was warm enough to soften stone. He didn't mean to stay, but he didn't walk away either. The next morning, he entered the kitchen expecting a sulking child. Instead, Ava was laughing while Natalie flipped lopsided pancakes. "She insists these are better than the chef's," Natalie said. "They taste like hugs," Ava declared proudly. Something loosened in Grayson's chest. Later, Natalie got her shirt caught on the old doorknob. She tugged, flustered. "Need help?" Grayson asked. "I've got it," she insisted. He stepped forward anyway, freeing the fabric gently. His fingers brushed hers, brief but charged. She froze. He stepped back quickly. "Door's got a mean grip," he muttered, fleeing down the hall. Dinner was non-negotiable. Ava demanded they eat together. "Family eats together," she declared. So they did. They talked. They laughed. For the first time in ages, the dining room felt human. And then Ava whispered, almost shyly, "I want to live here forever, if Miss Natalie stays." Grayson's fork halted. Natalie blinked. "This house feels happy now," Ava added. Grayson looked at Natalie. She didn't glow with pride. She only held Ava's hand with quiet tenderness. "She makes me feel like Mommy used to," Ava whispered. Something inside Grayson cracked open. Later, in the hallway, Grayson finally spoke. "I don't know what you're doing." She turned. "Do you want me to stop?" He shook his head. "No, I'm just not used to it." "To what?" "The quiet, not feeling empty." Her eyes softened. "I'm not trying to replace anyone." "I know. Sometimes people enter our lives and remind us what living feels like." He didn't answer. He simply breathed. For the first time in months, the Wells estate didn't feel like a mausoleum. It felt like a home. It began with laughter. A sudden spring downpour swept over Manhattan. Ava slipped onto the balcony, spinning barefoot in her pink dress, shrieking with joy as raindrops drenched her hair. By nightfall, the fever came. She shivered under blankets, forehead burning, breath shallow. Natalie didn't leave her side. She cooled her with damp cloths, whispered reassurance, coaxed tiny sips of water, monitored her breathing. Grayson stormed in. "She was on the balcony? Alone?" he thundered at the nanny. "Grayson," Natalie said quietly. He turned, startled. "Yelling won't lower her fever. If you want to help, keep your voice low. She needs calm right now." His anger deflated. He left without another word. Natalie stayed all night. Near midnight, Ava's fever broke. Natalie exhaled in relief. She slipped out into the hallway. The estate was silent, but then she heard something strange, a fractured, broken chord. She followed the sound. Inside the music room, Grayson sat at the grand piano, head bowed against the keys, shoulders trembling. The world's untouchable billionaire looked utterly undone. Natalie approached quietly. She rested a hand on his shoulder. His breath hitched. "I don't know how to be a father," he whispered. His voice broke, raw, splintered. Natalie stood beside him, steady, calm, present. And in that moment, something shifted, not just in the house, not just in Ava, but in him, in all of them. The beginning of something neither of them had words for yet, but both of them felt.